I've been really poorly initially with the physical thing. Um, I had like norovirus or rotavirus, I can't tell which, kept picking up from shops. And I had it over 3 or 4 weeks, it just kept coming back, and that really weakens you. But then the other thing is that I've, and this is quite a personal thing to talk about, but it's really important for what we talk about here. Uh, I've been on, I've been dealing with for a while now what we've sort of heard about in various forms and ways at points in our life as what's called or known as the dark, my own personal long dark night of the soul, which it feels really ostentatious saying it, and I feel a bit awkward saying it actually, that that is what it is. And I didn't like just one day wake up and go, do you know, I think I'm going to have a long dark night of the soul because that sounds cool. I always dismissed this stuff. I was like, when I heard about this, I thought, yeah. I've already had it as bad as it gets, so I don't think don't think I need to be worrying about that. That was a load of crap. What led me to consider that what was going on was a number of things. I mean, first of all, this is going to get worse, this conversation, I'm just warning you. First of all, I was getting some urging from, let's say, my spiritual benefactor. I don't want to talk about it. That I needed to make this trip, this journey. I needed to let go of things that were evidently causing me to... I was holding on to things that weren't doing me any good, and I sort of knew what was being talked about, but I sort of but I really just resisted it. But I knew it was going to be really painful, and really, because the things that I'm holding on to, they got me this far. You know what I mean? And I would even go as far as to say, as far as I was concerned, they've become my identity. This is actually quite painful to talk about. I'm going to try and I think I'm going to just try and like rush through it Cliff Note style, because I don't really want to linger on it. What my I don't know what to call her. What my helper was suggesting was that pursuing things the way I've pursued them has not worked. I am not well. I am not happy. I'm not even functional. I can't look after myself. I'm extremely ill. I'm not even very mature, really. I'm not coping. And I'm not a young man. It's not like this makes sense or this is a reasonable situation. It's it's a fail. But it's a fail for very good reasons, you know? It's not like I did take a wrong turn, but not in the sense that I made a career decision or I married the wrong woman or anything like that. I took a wrong turn in as far as my reaction to what happened to me and to what happened to, let's face it, all of us, was to invest in defining myself as opposed to being defined by the narcissist in ways that have not served me, in ways that have harmed me. I've pursued a path that I thought was going to serve me, or I thought would bring me freedom and a chance to sort of become somebody I would like or could live with, and could have a life. And I was ignoring the truth, which was that I was fundamentally missing being a person, which I think is what it does to you. I mean, we've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder and all that stuff, but you don't really become a person. You sort of... I've got one live viewer. I don't know if they're going to get... I don't know if they're quite getting what they expect, because this is not really about Death Stranding. But anyway, so The Long Dark Night of the Soul is basically... Oh God, he's exhausted. There's two ways of understanding it, and other people will have better definitions than this, right? But basically, it's the letting go of everything that you thought was important, and that could go right down to your worldview, you know? Oh God, he's cold. What's happened to the thermal pad? Basically, you're probably going to be it's very challenging, because not only do you have to sort of it probably sounds quite attractive. Oh yeah, letting go of everything, that sounds nice. But you've got to understand that it's actually one of the most frightening things. Do you know how narcissists you'll see that they're really frightened of losing control. Like, if you try to have an honest conversation with a narcissist, and that's if it was going well, you know, and you try to get them to see they didn't have to say do this. It could be if you had a narcissist friend, I don't suggest doing this with a narcissist parent. If you had a narcissist friend or a narcissist partner, and you found them being really, really controlling, and you could see right through it, and you just said to them, you know, it doesn't have to be like this. And you could even be making sense, and you'll see a point come when you'll see real fear in their eyes, like real horror, like as you start to make sense, and they will just tell you, look, you know, they'll come out with something like, don't try and analyse me, don't give me your amateur psychiatry or whatever, and they'll let you know. Well, it might not even be as complex as that, because they don't really respect you anyway, but they'll just be like, you'll realise what they're holding on to is more important to them than anything you have to say. You're not gonna break through. They made their decision, like Darth Vader. They made their decision a long time ago, you know. And if they were ever going to break free of this, it ain't going to be for you, right? Well, when we go through as the targets, as the victims, when we go through the long dark night of the soul, okay, we're facing that, our version of that, because the stuff that we've got, and this is how victims of narcissism and narcissists are so similar. Believe me, we're not the same. I'm not saying we're the same. We're not the same, but there are fundamental. And to be fair, this is probably what humans are like. It's probably not even about narcissism. This is just how humans work. It's just that when it goes wrong, it turns into things like narcissism. You get me? So basically, like, people's beliefs, okay, they serve a very specific function. Their beliefs our beliefs hold us hold the personality together, and this is why it's such a big deal with like religious beliefs. And I'm not saying that religion isn't real. I'm not saying God isn't real. I'm not saying anything like that. But the reason that religious beliefs why people become so dogmatic when it comes to religion, apart from the fact they really believe it, and as far as they're concerned, and who knows, they may be absolutely right, but nevertheless, as soon as the conversation stops, you're dealing with dogmatism. You've got to be able to consider things. You've got to be able to consider all possibilities, and it can be very difficult to do that. And it becomes more difficult to do that when your identity depends upon your beliefs. And that's what people generally are like. That's what generally human beings do. We cope with all the madness of the human experience by having belief systems. Now, some of those belief systems are absolutely valid, but the truth is the most fundamental ones, and they tend to be fairly universal, like, for example, you know, it is wrong to harm a person. It is specifically wrong to harm, say, you know, a child, you know. That's all pretty easy. The maternal instincts, the protective instincts, all that stuff, that's all fundamental. That should be there. But here's the thing: what if you feel that way, or you see what if you know someone, or you notice in yourself that you have that level of vivaciousness of belief about something much less quantifiable as being a fundamental, important belief. I just want to see what's up here, because I think I could have maybe saved myself a lot of trouble. Oh, okay. Here we go. Oh dear. So, it could save me a lot of time, actually. So, you'll see a narcissist will become incredibly uncomfortable, um, even just talking about feelings and emotions, honestly. Well, we are equally defensive um, about some things. I mean, for me, it was there was like I'm really I don't know if I really want to do this, but I had some coping strategies that I'm not very proud of. Just got to change his shoes, and it was really hard for me to let go. I'll tell you what it is. I'll just get over it. The way I coped with what happened to me, because everybody else around me was doing so well, is I had this belief that excused my frailty, my incompetence, right? And that belief was that I'd suffered more than anybody else. Now, we could get into a conversation about what I meant by that, and what the point of thinking something like that was, and how ridiculous or not that was, but basically, I will see what I've done. But basically, I was really, really dogmatic about it, and I understand some people might find it absolutely laughable, and some people might find it really offensive, and some people might find it narcissistic. But I couldn't. I've been so shamed for my incompetence and my inability to cope, and there was no medical explanation for it, that I I just needed to have an explanation that I could live with, and at the same time, it's fair to say that I had a really unpleasant life up to that point, and I didn't understand that other people were going through things. I didn't understand that other people had been through terrible things like sexual abuse and stuff like that. I knew we're going back a long time. We're going back to when a lot less of this stuff was discussed and known about. Like, it was thought that in some dark corners of the world, terrible things happened, like in the worst sort of in the worst care homes for children and stuff like that. But not like how we know about now, how widespread it is, and how many victims of it there are out there. Which is, and it is shocking. And but I was living in a world where everybody else was fine, was strong, was on the outside, had no issues. I also grew up in quite a hostile environment in terms of the psychological nature of the sort of town I grew up in. It was the racist, football hooligan, violent 80s, and the town I grew up in was like that, I'm not a person of colour or anything like that, or homophobic as well. I'm also not gay, but I was an outsider. It was an intolerant and volatile situation. And although I never personally got physically attacked, I lived in constant fear of physical attack, and you did see a lot of violence around. There was definitely violence around. There were pubs you just didn't go in, and there were parts of town you didn't want to walk through on your own, or you'd only walk through because you were walking through them with other people who seemed to be completely blithely unaware of how dangerous this place was, because they themselves weren't suffering from the stigma of narcissistic abuse. They weren't a target. I know how self-pitying this can sound. But I don't think that should be my concern. I'm telling you how it was. I'm at the very least telling you what my perception of it was. If you choose not to acknowledge what I'm saying or to question the validity of my perspective, you're absolutely entitled to do that. But I think there will be people out there listening to this who will absolutely know what the fuck I'm talking about. And it's okay if that isn't you, but it might be that you were privileged in some way, and you didn't have it like this. Or I could be privileged and I could be wrong. It could be all of these crazy things, but I'm telling you, man, that was the way I dealt with it, and it was a dogmatic, sick belief. And you know what the worst part is? Although I've moved on from it, I'm not cured of it. It's so deep. I still think, really, deep down, that I had it so bad that it made it impossible for me to have any kind of life. And really, the point of this is that it was a belief that it was very, very hard for me to let go of. And when you have the long dark night of the soul, you basically are letting go of all the beliefs that you find hard to let go of. So I've been doing that. Now the spiritual benefactor that guides me and helps me, she said that when this happens, if I agree to this, I would lose everything. Like I would lose not everything in the material sense necessarily, or at all. I should do this because she guaranteed me that if I could be brave enough to let go of everything, I wouldn't lose her. And it was a good deal. Because that's I concede completely that the way I've done things hasn't worked, okay? And I treasure this relationship with this spiritual benefactor. I treasure it more than anything, I think, apart from my apart from the loss of my relationship with the person I'll loosely call my stepson, which is it's somebody I was very close to, and I'm no longer allowed to contact with for no fault of my own, because of the choices made by his mother. So I've been going down this path, the long dark night of the soul, and it is hard. And I've been through the worst of it now. And what I believe, and the reason I made this video today, right, is I believe that now I've gone through it, I think it's extremely likely that all of us that have suffered from narcissistic abuse, I think that we all of us need to go through with the long dark night of the soul, because, and it could just be me projecting, oh, if I had to do it, you've got to do it. That's possible. I'm not above that. I can be a, you know, I'm a frail, vain human being, you know. I'm not always right, but I try really hard to keep, you know, to use reason and honesty to understand myself. But when I look at there's so much pride and vanity in surviving narcissistic abuse, because they take away all of the natural sort of I don't know how much of it is us and how much of it is them. I mean, they do a lot of harm, you know, the abusive people, but also that genetic, like, preference, it's in there, like, the target and the narcissist, you know, we're all connected. Like, if the capacity for if the capacity, that's a lovely image, isn't it? Look at that. The capacity for, like, the narcissist to the capacity for the narcissist to become a narcissist, and the response to the narcissist behaviour of the target, I think they're kind of connected. It doesn't make the target a narcissist, but it means that we've got some similar sort of wounding and damage. I don't think we're narcissists. I think psychiatrists are getting very, very sloppy in their diagnosing of desperate targets of narcissism who are desperate for help and, you know, insistent on being understood. I think we're getting some very, very poor psychiatry out there, and I think that's why the diagnostic numbers are flying up. That's my personal opinion. I think we've been really let down by the existing Western medical model to an absolutely, you know, absolutely unacceptable level. For one thing, the finding time for diagnostic is so short. You know, you'd need to put in, I think, 6 or 7 sessions over 3 months, really, to make a diagnosis of somebody who's got a narcissistic complication, let's say, or a narcissistic stigma. But and ultimately, the real difference is that the target of narcissism wants to get better, and the narcissist doesn't want anything to change at all. And the narcissistic victim will sacrifice almost anything, and this ties into what I'm saying to you today. The victim will sacrifice almost anything, and the long dark night of the soul is well, it looks to me like it might be the biggest sacrifice, you know. I invested, I once said to my therapist, Marion, I have made suffering my life's work. That is so me. That is so me. And it's so true, and it's both kind of cool and beautiful that I could get that amount of insight, but it also smacks of my self-absorption and my self-importance, because what I did was I decided that because I wasn't any good at anything, and I am pretty incompetent, but I have a great, my imagination is good. And I decided I was going to become this creative artist, and I was going to show the world, you know, all about things. And look, that wasn't a bad idea. I mean, I became pretty good, and I achieved a few things. I formed a band. I worked very hard on the local music scene, and I became fairly well respected for what I was doing. Although I was working so hard, I didn't know it until much later, most of the time. But all the time, I was adding bricks to a backpack on my back of running away from being a person. Look, we got home. I've got this guy home. So I have to bring this video to a stop. I got Sam home, which means I should really end the video. I'm sorry it's not been a very ordered video. Wow. Come on, Sam. It's not easy to talk about this stuff. If you know about the long dark night of the soul, or you've heard about it, or you think you might have been through it yourself, all I can say is if you've been through it, you know you've been through it, because it takes a lot of courage, or it took me a lot of courage. In fact, and I found out that most people go through it without the spiritual guidance and assistance that I've had. So, like, I don't know how people do it. So I guess I'm not as strong as I like to think. Because, you know... Look, we're home. I guess I'm not as strong as I like to think, because I had to have a lot of help. I like a real, you know, urging to do this by, well, you know, without going into it in too much detail, by my spiritual advisor. That's what I should have said. And promises were made. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't strong enough to make that leap on my own. And I'm really grateful to her for helping me and giving me that strength. Bless her soul. She's a wonderful person, and I'm deeply grateful to her and for the forces that brought her into my life. But basically, if you can imagine a shopping list, okay, imagine two shopping lists. On the first shopping list, I want you to write like your soul right at the top, and on the other shopping list, I want you to write at the top my personality. Okay, and under my soul, I want you to realise that there's only one or two things there. Under the soul shopping list, it's like um, there's basically me, right? And underneath that, there's, say, like God or my belief in God or something like that. And then maybe something like my kids, right? That's the really important stuff. But the second list, my personality, that's a long list. Like, it's huge. It's vast. And it's all the stuff you've built, all the stuff that you've created. In my case, it was, I'm going to be this great artist. I'm going to be this great singer. I'm going to be this great songwriter. I'm going to make the world a better place through my songs, through my, you know, my incredible understanding of, you know, the human condition, because I'm so wise and I'm so smart, because I've suffered more than everybody else. Yada, 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 yada. Everything that we built, the exoskeleton that we put on to survive, you know? And, you know, and, that's all gotta go. So on my soul list, I've got me, I've got the spirit being, spiritual advisor, and then a bit further down, I've got kind of, you know, obviously I've got my love for the kid that I raised. But that should be it. My belief in God. That's the first list. Second list, oh, it's a load of bullshit. A load of bullshit that I really believed in. You know? And I burnt the list. Well, that's going to have to do for part one of The Long Dark Night of the Soul. I'll listen to this back. I don't know if it was any good. I'll leave it up for now, unless I decide to, and I might do it all again though if, you know, I might do it again if I decide it's not any good, or I was too distracted by playing this game. The idea of doing the game was that there'd be visuals that like would in some way illustrate what I was talking about, because that's what I like to think happens when I do it like this. But you know, it's difficult to talk about this stuff. Alright, well, let's call it a day.